Yo guys, just ran 5 miles. Today I did 2 videos before my run and 2 after. And when I finished that, my body told me that it wanted to go for another run. I uploaded the videos and watched a video by Travis Wu, who's one of the people who inspired me to live in this way. And he said something to the effect of like, make sure you're making yourself strong, getting exercise. So I was like, cool, let's do this. So I started running, and instead of going on my normal route, I went in the other direction. So I was thinking about how my body was starting to tell me stuff and I knew I could trust it, and I was thinking my muscles are tight, so I'm going to stop after the first mile and stretch. So I stopped after the first mile. A mile away from my house, there's a highway. Actually, this highway that's kind of behind me now, you can probably hear it. And right near the intersection where I stopped, there was a sign that said elect Colin Dwyer for town justice. And I was stretching, and I remembered that when I was in high school, my track team, Colin Dwyer was the one who always reminded us to stretch. And so I was thinking about how the things my body was telling me to do were things I knew I could trust. And that made me feel like this person might be a good town justice. And I think, if I remember correctly, the person who was running was actually his father. But before I go there, I'm going to just mention that today was the first day that my body told me to do this and go in the other direction. And today was election day, so it was, in a sense, it's the last day that I could have seen this sign. So these are all good signs that I'm in alignment with where I'm supposed to be. The next thing that struck me as really coincidental was I was running in a part of the town where I remembered that I once pulled off and parked the car there so that I could have some alone time with somebody. And I thought it was a good spot to be out of the way, even though it was in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And right a minute after I was thinking that, even though I wasn't on the same road as that, I was based in the same part of the neighborhood, I saw some people who were parked on the side of the road having some private time. I saw them grinding some stuff up and peeking over their shoulder. So I gave them a little over-the-shoulder wave to say, hey, I see you, I know what you're doing, it's not bad, but I'm not going to look at you anyway because I know that's what you prefer, and we understand each other. The third thing that I noticed was that I started to feel thirsty. So I was pausing after every mile to stretch, and remember what I told you the other day is that the first time I got knocked off my train tracks was when my friend was walking a dog and she waved at me intensely enough that I knew I had to stop. And when I stopped, I hit this X on my watch to end the workout instead of hitting the pause to pause the workout. So now I'm using the pause. So by being knocked off my train tracks, I actually gained a new ability, which has led me further afield, and was able to reimagine my structure. Because remember, the only 2 stipulations for mile pace tracks are that every day I should ask for suggestions, and then I should try to run a mile before each track ends. There's no actual stipulations about where I have to run, or whether I can stop, or how many miles I have to do per day. So I'm exploring the things that my intuition tells me to do within the constraints that I have set out for myself. And so after the 3rd mile, I was like, oh man, or maybe the 4th, I was like, oh, I'm kind of thirsty. I was thinking, like, where can I get water? And I remembered there's a baseball field over here. And then somebody drove by, and I'm like, oh, that guy reminds me of someone. It was a baseball coach that I had. The guy's name was Merritt Sargent. So his names are full of legitimacy. And so I thought those were good signs that I should come here. And then when I got here, I found the water fountain. And here's what it said. Here's the water. And here's what they chose to hang here. I have trust in God, I love my country, and will respect its laws. I will play fair, strive to win, but win or lose, I will always do my best. And so I'm looking at those incantations and thinking about the periodicity of when you reevaluate things. Religion, country, respect, law, rules of the game. So, the rules of the game, they can change sometimes. Magic has been changing rules every few months this year. Just got 2 new rules this month. Respect, what does that mean? Well, that's kind of evolving too. It's like what I said about how we interact with people and then back off when they ask us to back off. How do we determine the rules of the road? And how do we know when to check back to see if the rules of the road have changed? What's above that? Laws. Okay, laws can change too. They change a little less frequently, but they change. And then what's above that? The country. Countries can change. These days, we may be into a state of militarization where a lot of those borders seem like they will never change, but then again, we're not in our final resting state yet, and there are still borders that are still changing, and there are still people who feel strongly enough about their beliefs and freedoms that they will make the unimaginable sacrifices that it takes to change those borders. And then what's above that? It says God. Well, that traditionally is the thing that people want you to reevaluate with the least frequency. And these days, that's not what it is, but I have come to my own analysis of what religion is. Now, I feel like, I'll make this real short and sweet. I feel like a lot of people have gotten to a point where they look at the big 3 theistic religions and they kind of put them on a level playing field with each other. They say if you tolerate one, you should tolerate all 3. Which is fine. If that's as complex as you want to do it, you do you. What I have noticed is that religion seems to me to be a system that predated science. It was a system for answering questions that were difficult to answer, and a system for motivating people to follow instructions that were designed to keep them safe. How do you motivate people to follow your instructions? Well, you can use carrots and you can use sticks. You can demonstrate through achievement. You can demonstrate through honor and recognition. Or you can demonstrate through money, power, patronage, family. You can demonstrate who gets the beautiful brides, who gets the houses that are away from the noisy streets, who gets cared for first when there is a epidemic. And I don't know if religion is a clear factor in any of this. I'm not making any particular accusations or generalizations, but just thinking about religion as a set of tools to motivate people to follow instructions and to convince them that the instructions are worth following, and to spend the proper amount of time analyzing and re-evaluating those decisions. So yesterday I was talking about how re-evaluating your decision between iPhone and Android, like maybe you want to re-evaluate that every 3 years, but you don't want to re-evaluate it every year because that would be a waste of your time. And there's also a possibility of being led astray by a single data point. So how often do you want to reevaluate your religion? Well, maybe it's at a lower frequency, but I just thought it was interesting that the order in which those were listed out was it was kind of in order of their firmness and their periodicity. The fourth thing that happened that was really coincidental was I was starting to run past an open field, and I was like, oh, I saw the tall weeds, and I was like, oh, there might be bugs there. I should stay away because I know how to keep myself safe. And right after I thought that, I got a little twinge in my nose, and I ran past a carcass from a possum that had been run over. So right before that, I had run past a new piece of construction where they had built a sidewalk that only went in front of a single house. So I ran on the sidewalk immediately ended, and I was like, this is ironic. And I was thinking about why the techno music was so good for helping me comprehend my culture in such a deep way. And I know that musicians have a deep, abiding understanding of the complexity of culture, and part of the reason for this is because they are so accustomed to being in close proximity with people who are experiencing energy in a very intense way, and they're pushing the boundaries, and they're allowing themselves to use substances that relax them and experiment with the boundaries, change the boundaries, cross the boundaries. And the emotions that people have, the sexual energy that they have, the expression, and the people's shared experience of when they can understand the expression, or when they discover a new way to understand it that no one else has. Musicians are so close to all of this emotional communication, and they don't have to use language, and that's why most of the tracks that I have been using have no words. It's just about something more timeless. And so I was thinking about how musicians are really good at letting people experiment within that almost boundaryless experience, but still having the safety net in place to keep them safe. And so I was like, oh yeah, there's a sidewalk here, but it only extends to a certain space. And then once I leave the sidewalk, I start getting signals on both my left and my right that I might be stepping into a dangerous place. So I spoke before about leveraging the learning potential of a high-risk maneuver by wandering around in a low-risk area. And I spoke about listening to new music while I was running the same familiar route, the route that I grew up in, the route that I moved to almost 30 years ago. And today, for my afternoon exploration, what I'm doing is listening to music that I have already listened to during the first week and a half of this project. But I'm running around a neighborhood that I did not grow up in. I haven't visited this neighborhood as much. The periodicity that with which I visit this neighborhood is lower. And okay, moving on to periodicity. So I was thinking about the Fibonacci back off, and I was like, well, some things don't need to back off as quickly as at the beginning. Like, you can do something 5 days in a row and then start to back off and do it less frequently. And that speaks to the human habit forming tendency that once you do something 5 times, it becomes a habit. So it might be good to do it a bunch of times in a row before you start to back off and do it less frequently. When you're contacting someone, I thought, like, if it's their job to be responsive to you, you don't have to back off. You can keep contacting them every day. I mean, depending on the circumstance, but that is one hint about what the correct frequency should be. And then also thinking about tradition and the natural frequencies that people have established. The 5-day work week, having a vacation every few months, a fortnight, looking back in the day, the periodicity that made sense to them, like check back every 2 weeks, and having a quarterly performance review, right? So looking at the periods for a check-in that makes sense to millions or even billions of other people that have come before is something that I feel now motivated to start to explore that. So I think that's about all that my battery is gonna put up with for now, but I'll see you again later today. I have no doubt of that.